All right, here with Tyler LaTorre, ABCA Tech NAI Coach of the Year, but you guys are transitioning to Division II. I just saw that, but Westmont College, 48-9 record, and national championships, first year head coach. So multiple stops at D1 and D2. So Tyler, thanks for jumping on with me.
Thank you very, very much for having me.
Yeah, it was cool getting to meet you in Lewiston. That's a neat thing for me of going to all of those is I get a chance to meet people I didn't know. So it's tremendous. I'm happy for you guys.
Thank you so much. Lewiston is definitely a an experience I think that every baseball person should be a part of. It was an incredible experience. Obviously, a little bit more important with us winning the national championship, but even if we didn't, it was still an experience for a baseball guy to be a part of.
Yeah, and when you got there in the fall, I mean, they had been there the year before, correct?
Yeah. So, Coach Robert Ruiz was the previous head coach and moved with this transition to Division II as our athletic director. So to have him as a mentor, as the AD was huge in this first year of being a head coach. But they had gone for the first time in school history the year before. Unfortunately, it was a two losses and heading home, but we returned quite a few players from that, and so it was a good transition into a new head coach, and I was excited to fulfill the final vision for the program of winning the national championship.
With those guys that had returned, what did they mention from the year before?
There was a it was a sense of it was a sense of just being happy to be there. The Westmont program had been to a lot of opening round um, contests, opening round hosting bids. When they won in 2022, they almost felt like that was their season. Getting to Lewiston was the goal, not, and it was almost just happy to be there. And so with this group returning, it was almost of unfinished business, and we knew from the previous. We had two coaches that had been there before as our assistants. We had players that had already been through a lot of the pomp and circumstance of going to the World Series with opening ceremonies and the kids clinic and going to the elementary schools. So we had already been through that, and so I think there was a little bit more of attention to detail on what we are actually trying to do.
Hey, with your assistants, how did you figure out who you're going to keep around? Because if they were there the year before,
Yeah, so Elijah Ontiveros is our head assistant. He actually graduated from UC Davis. He's obviously younger than me, but there was a connection there. He's now starting his seventh year at Westmont. He does a lot of the scheduling and travel and a lot of the off the field stuff. But on the field, he works with our catchers. He actually, worked with pitchers one year, and so. We also have a volunteer coach in Greg Venzer, who's been here for 17 years. He is a local Santa Barbara native that knows baseball and been around the program. So he has a day job and works around his schedule to be out there. So his wealth of knowledge. And then we hired Rick Hubbard as our pitching coach, who coached for the Santa Barbara Foresters, which is a summer collegiate team here in Santa Barbara. So he knew what it was like to be here. But he was also he's from Buffalo, New York, played at Canisius, and then coached at Georgia Tech. So he was a pitching development guy at Georgia Tech. So he's been had some stops along the way. So it was a good staff dynamic to have two new coaches to Westmont community, but also have two coaches and voices that had been around for quite some time to see the growth of the program.
with your pitching and catching background, because you've done both, was that something you planned on coming in and taking over a program that you're going to give that to somebody else?
I think it's just a matter of finding the right person. If we didn't feel like we found a pitching coach that I felt comfortable enough or felt like was the right fit for our program, I had no problem with doing the pitching. If we found a catching coach that could take that over, that was great, and that's what Elijah's done for us. He took over the catching, so it allows me as a head coach to oversee, not micromanage, but just have intentional conversations about what this program is trying to achieve. and then letting our coaches coach. And that's just the ability, the experiences that I've had over playing and coaching. You kind of let your coaching staff guide you where the best fit is.
I mean, do you think it helps a guy that dealing with pitchers to have a catching background?
I think it's influential. I think this whole game is built on relationships, and the most important relationship on the field is the pitcher catcher relationship. It just built. It's a different perspective. I have it. I see the game differently than a pitcher would. I've had countless mound visits with countless big leaguers and Hall of Famers, and now on the coaching side of draftable players and non-draftable players, you build up relationships with individuals, and as a catcher, you are that servant leader out there that is a servant to the pitchers, and who you're working with. Some pitchers need a pat on the back, and some need a kick in the rear. And you as a catcher have to be there and know who you're working with. So that different perspective has provided me an opportunity to impact players, whether it's on the field or off the field. I have a different perspective on a lot of things just because of the catcher having to deal with so many aspects of the game.
I mean, how long did it take you to develop that kind of sense as a catcher to, okay, this is a guy that I need to maybe be honest with and brutally honest with, or this guy might need to handle with more kid gloves?
Yeah, I think that started in my collegiate career, of observing. My family, my dad was an athletic director and a coach. My grandfather was an athletic director and a commissioner for the whole state of California community colleges. I knew what it was like to have relationships with people and gauge a room. It kind of came innately to me when I started catching at UC Davis, where you build relationships, you build trust. As a catcher or a coach in general, if you don't build trust, and the relationship isn't built on that, no matter what you say or how you get a pitcher, a player, a parent, if that isn't built on trust, you don't have anything. And so building relationships, asking questions, sometimes just watching and observing. It's something that over the course of my career of playing and coaching that it's always ongoing. I've never stopped trying to provide for our players the best that I can be for them. And I think that was based on my playing experience.
With your new catchers coming in, how comfortable are they with kind of the new one knee down traditional? Are they coming in? Are you seeing that a lot more with your incoming catchers, that they have more feel for that?
Yeah, and I think that's just that's the growth of the game. And I think, and the way that I approach it is very individual, very, very similar to pitching and hitting. You can't have a cookie cutter system. Players move differently. Players come from different backgrounds. But I think ultimately there's a big gap between a professional player, a collegiate player, a high school player, and even the biggest gap you can have with the little league player. And there's steps along the way. And so, when I was the catching coach at Sacramento State a few years ago, we had two catchers that caught on one knee, and we had two catchers that caught traditionally. That was based on experience. That was based on conversation. That was based on their ability and their flexibility. So there was always those conversations that were going on. And when we bring catchers in here, it's what have you done in the past? Who have you learned from? What do you like? What have you tried and disliked? Hey, I want you to try this. And it's not so much us dictating what it is. It's why. Why do we want you to set up this? How are we going to get there? So that they're invested in it. If we just tell them what to do, they're not going to be invested in it, and they're not going to know why it's going to help impact the game and impact winning.
What about calling pitches?
Our pitching coach did it. It was something that our pitchers had trust in him through their experiences of bullpens, their throwing progression, lifting, their pre-throw, post-throw. That's something that trust is being built. I think as a coaching staff, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Pitch calling was something for before a couple years ago. I had called pitches from my sophomore year of college through pro ball, and then my first 6 years of coaching. So something I had to kind of take a step back from. And it was a good step back. It gave me a different perspective, but I also have experiences that I want our coaching staff to understand and lead our pitchers down the right road. I think pitch calling, if you look too much into it and every pitch has the weight of the world on it, it's going to have big swings, highs and lows. Um, our pitching staff knows that when we call a pitch, there's a purpose behind it. They have the ability to shake off if they're not convicted in it. You can throw the right pitch at the right time and have a negative outcome. You can throw the wrong pitch at the wrong time, and it could be a swing and miss or a pop up to the infield. Second guessing is not something that our program does. But we do have conviction in what we do. Pitch calling is we are trying to lead our pitchers down the correct road for success. If we have a batter in the box that is not a good, the scouting report says he doesn't do well with a certain pitch, but that isn't our pitcher's best, we're still going to go with the pitcher's best. I think one thing that our pitching staff knows with pitch calling is you almost kind of have the casino mindset. The house always wins. Pitching in the game of baseball is the house. The house always wins. So even though that pitch might not have worked out in the long run, more pitchers will work out than won't.
Without having really seen the guys coming out of the fall, did you have an idea that you guys were going to be pretty good?
No, it was the red carpet was not laid out for this team. There was a lot of adversity. You have it. We graduated 16 seniors. A lot more had a greater impact than others. But throughout the fall, it was a new voice. It was a new vision. Even though Coach Ruiz and I have very similar morals, very similar coaching philosophies, the delivery was different. And it took some time for guys to hear my voice and from little things, from changing ball to I got it. Changing the signs, changing, one drill we had one day was not very good. And some of the seniors said, "Hey, do you think we can add music to this drill?" And so we added music and it changed the whole entire practice. And it was, for me, it was like, why did we have to add music? And it made it better.
What music did they want? I'm a music guy.
It was a mixture. It was they have the electronic music, they had some rock and roll, they had some country, they had some pop. It was very eclectic. It was very diverse. It wasn't anything that was special. But being at a school like Westmont, it didn't have foul language or anything like that. So, but we added music to it, and it created energy, which I didn't, coming from any stop along the way, we didn't need that extra energy. I suppose maybe it would have helped. It's something that we learned. But throughout the season, it was even though we were winning games, I knew that how we were winning games wasn't going to be sustainable. And so we coached harder. Even though we were winning games, we coached harder. We were more detail oriented because we knew that the goal of this team was not just to go to Lewiston. And in order to do what we did in Lewiston, we needed to iron those things out. And sometimes winning doesn't expose those lapses or those details that we needed to iron out.
Because you really only had one hiccup during the year, one weekend. It looked like Hope International early, but then you got them back at the end of the year, though.
Yeah, so they definitely saw a different team, and that was a turning point for us. Hope International was ranked higher than us. They're a perennial NAIA top 10 team. We went down to their place. They had a little bit more velo than we had seen earlier in the year. Our guys, maybe in the past, knew that we didn't play very well down at Hope, which bothered me a lot. But they gave us 3 losses, and it wasn't just the losses; it was the way that we were losing. And from then on, I think we were 10-5 at that point. And so from then on out, we went 38-9 after that point, 39-9 from that point. And it was definitely a turning point. And it was not something that, like I said, it was not a red carpet. There was a lot of adversity. There was a lot of learning. There was a lot of transition of confidence and belief that came from that.
And then guys rolled in Lewiston, and then Southeastern got you, but came back and got Southeastern, and then you beat Lewis Clark State to win it. And that's, I mean, the storied program of NAI is Lewis Clark State, so that had to be magical for you guys to beat them in front of their home crowd, basically.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, that first loss that we had against Southeastern, that was the first time in a really long time that I felt that we played the game against the opponent. When we went to Hope International the first weekend of conference, I felt like we were playing against the opponent instead of playing against the game or playing within ourselves. So when we played Southeastern, the number one team in the country, on ESPN for the first time, the lights of us being 3-0, and then if we beat them, it's a knockout game for them. It was the first time that I hadn't seen our guys that I had seen our guys not communicate the way that we've been communicating. There was a little bit of hesitation. There was a little bit of looking around to see what was actually happening. But the way we responded was incredible. To go out the day before and have a loss to Southeastern, to come back the next day and beat them, was what our team was about. And then the final game against Lewis and Clark State on their home field, they're going for their 20th victory. Seemed like the whole town was in attendance. For our guys, it was a pure representation of what Westmont College is and what Westmont College baseball is about. The adversity that was that game, with the amount of ups and downs, the back and forth, and so it was a culmination of a lot of things, and our guys believing in each other. We have our juniors and seniors back this week for a leadership retreat, and they're going to help with the move-in tomorrow of all the new students on campus. But I told them I didn't feel stress in Lewiston. I didn't feel like I needed to have my own head coach impact on those games. The course of the season that was built allowed me to put guys in position to succeed, but be okay with the result no matter what happened. If Gabe Artiaga, our closer that closed out our final game, if he would have given up a 2-run home run to lose us the championship, I would love him just as much as him getting the last out. And our players knew that and believed in each other. They knew that they were there for a reason, and they were in the lineup or on the mound because of the trust that each and every one of their teammates and their coaching staff had in them. I was not stressed out in Lewiston, not one bit. Full honest to God truth. I
Well,
knew that
strength your
our
team was pitching too. I mean, it helps with the arms that you all had, and you mentioned him. Did you know coming out of the fall that he was probably going to fill that role as closing games?
I think we had a few options, and Gabe Artiaga was one of them. Carlos Moreno was another one, and I know that he didn't have the season that he wanted. He actually started that game as an opener for our loss against Southeastern, and he dealt with some injuries, but he had some closing opportunities. Robbie Ha, our shortstop, who had 4 saves the year before, he had 3 outings all year. So like the pitching kind of came together over the course of the year, and then Lucian Wetchberg was lights out for the last 4 months of the year. It was incredible to watch his progression. So I did feel like we had 4, 5, 6 options at the end of the game. And when you get into a tournament like that, where you have 5 games in a row, you need it. It can't just be 1 or 2 guys. It's got to be everybody.
Did you use an opener a lot?
We didn't. We didn't at all. Actually, we had our 3 starters who made every single start. I think Eric Gosegera missed 1 start towards the end of the year, but that was that was one of the reasons why we won as many games as we did, was having 3 starters that went out there and gave our team an opportunity to win, and allowed our bullpen to not get taxed early in the season, or have guys that weren't prepared for certain situations have to get stretched out longer than they are ready for. And so, Brian Peck and Chase Goddard and Eric Otsegera, they were the backbone of this program, because it allowed us to use guys in certain situations that were going to prepare them for playoff baseball and ultimately winning a national championship.
I mean, how'd you come to that decision in Lewiston that, okay, we're gonna use an opener here for this game?
It was not an elimination game for us. We only really had 3 starters. If we could get a quality couple innings out of Carlos Moreno, we didn't play defense behind him those first couple innings. We used him to try to bridge to Sean Youngerman, who's a freshman, who actually ended up going 5 really good innings for us and ultimately saved our guys for the next 2 games. So you throw a freshman out there against the number one team, it could have gone south really quickly, and we may not have ever rebounded from that. But we didn't use openers. We didn't have those options to give us. I could have used Brian Peck on 2 days short rest, but if we would have lost with him, it
It
wasn't going to
hurts you
set
the
up.
next game too.
Yeah. So there was some game planning there, but also understanding in the way that our players would have rallied was something that I knew we were a resilient bunch. We had a lot of come from behind victories in the year, and we truly believed in each other, no matter who was on the mound.
And Brady Rank offensively for you all. Like just looking at his stat line, I mean, you don't see it as much. He had 41 walks and 19 Ks. Plus, I mean, he could hit for power, hit for average, stole a bunch of bases. I mean, have you had many guys like that are that complete offensive players?
No, and I think that his presence in the lineup spread through the lineup. I think early on in the year we didn't really have an offensive identity. We struck out a lot, way too much early on in the year. Once we cut those strikeouts down, and that's what Brady did. I think like you said, like his walks to strikeout ratio was off the charts. His just the pressure that he put on pitchers, and we for the last few months of the year we made pitchers work 1 through 9. And it showed in our game against Southeastern. Like we knocked their starter, their number one pitcher, we knocked him out in like the second or third inning. And we made them bring in bullpen guys, and they have bullpen dudes. But we put pressure on them. Same thing happened in the championship game against Lewis and Clark. Like we scored off of walks. Our base running was off the charts. We It's something that's a point in our program is the base running, and our guys believe in it. They know how it impacts winning. But 1 through 9, our guys were the toughest outs in America, and I truly believe that. And it wasn't just one or two guys in the lineup. Yes, Brady set the tone. Robbie Haas set the tone at the top of the lineup, and Ryan DeSager hit third, and Bryce McFeely hit fourth. But 1 through 9, we were extremely tough to get out.
I mean, when did that start clicking for guys? Because that's something you talk about as a coach, but the guys have to go out and do it and be okay with maybe taking a strike here and there, even if it's not in the zone that they're looking for.
What I found throughout the year is talking hitting in stretch lines, going out there and talking about the previous day of maybe why I pinch hit this person in this spot, or why did I have this, why did we steal, or why did we score those 3 runs in the fifth inning? It was because we had a great secondary lead and we beat a force out to extend the inning, even if we didn't mean to score in runs. Like this is how we impact winning, and it doesn't have to be getting hits or doubles or homers, and having those conversations. We had seniors that were 1, 2, 3, and 5 in our lineup that could talk about what winning it feels like. They knew what it looked like. Now, just giving them the opportunity to talk more baseball. Baseball IQ is something that we look for in recruits. Baseball IQ is something that we're talking about with our players all the time, and talking about how it impacts winning. And I think that baseball needs to get back to that. What is winning baseball? Winning baseball is not how hard you throw, how hard you hit off a tee, your exit velo. That doesn't mean anything. What it means is how can you impact the game? And our guys know what they, meaning self-awareness, how they personally can impact the game. If you can hit a home run, I need you to hit a home run sometimes. If you can't hit a home run, I need you to lay down a bunt when the third baseman's sleeping and lay in a little bit too far back. I need you to, we need to go first to third. If you came into our program and asked what our hitting philosophy is, our hitting philosophy is leading the country in doubles. And a double is not just hitting a ball that clears the outfielder and goes to the fence. Like getting hit by a pitch and reading a ball in the dirt, that's a double. Going first to third in a left fielder's face because he didn't run hard after the ball, that's a double. And so what you deem as important you need to track it. And so in the fall we track doubles. During the season we track doubles. How is that going to impact us in the large scheme of having a season and having the development side?
Any adjustments with the program since you're moving to Division II?
We have a large freshman class coming in, so it has impacted recruiting. I think we have a fit based program. We have a non-denominational Christian college that is very very high academic, and so I think we're actually getting our foot in the door with some recruits that maybe are looking for that Division I, but finding a fit with us, which is great. I have full confidence in our players that were here previously that they're going to put in the work that's going to allow them to succeed at the Division II level. But it is just as good as I do. NAIA baseball is really, really good baseball, and making the transition to Division II, it might just be a little bit more depth. But with where we're coming from at the NAIA level, with coming off of a national championship, like we played Division I caliber talent in Lewiston. Our guys responded the correct way, and I'm not worried about our talent level not being good enough. But there are, going from NAIA to Division II, there are rules of hour restriction, Kara hours and lifting hours, and we have to have 2 days off a week now in the fall. So there's going to be some self-driven, a little bit more player driven practices where the coaches aren't involved. And I'm excited to see our leadership crew kind of come together to shepherd in this new freshman class of what Westmont baseball is.
And for NAI too, you see maybe a few more transfers, but it looked like you guys more high school kids.
Yeah, there's a good mix. There's a good mix. We've done a really good job prior to me getting here of bringing in really good talent. And there is a good mix. And bringing in, we have quite a few freshmen coming in, but we do have some junior college players and some Division I kickbacks they just want opportunity. And the best players that you can have are the ones that want to push for opportunity and want to be competitive. We are going to have a competitive fall, and it's not competitive me versus the player versus player. It's going to be players pushing players to get called up to the standard and expectations of what this program is. And it's not divisive. It's not, I'm going to beat this guy out because I don't want him to play over me. It's who's going to be the one that's going to represent this program and get us, pushed in the right direction, because we do have 2 years of non-playoffs. Who's going to lead us into the next frontier of this Division II transition?
Have the older players always helped the new incoming freshmen move into the dorms?
Yeah, it's something that is special. It's special. It's very unique. It's not something I've been a part of, but when you move in here at Westmont, our freshmen and transfers, they drive up with their car. They know what building they're getting moved into, and they don't touch any of the luggage boxes or anything. We have our players. We have basketball players, students that are here early. That the car drives up. We unload it for them. We bring them to the room, and they go park, and everything's in their room delivered for them. And it's something that's really special and unique to Westmont. But our guys are a part of it, and it's something that is embedded in this program, that we are servants. We are servants to this special place that's called Westmont College. And our servant leadership with our group is putting other people ahead of them. And there's no job too low for any of our older guys, whether it's raking on the field, cleaning up baseballs, or helping with move-in of freshmen that may be going through a tough transition, an exciting, anxiety-filled transition.
You talked about pushing extra bases. I mean, when does that start for you all in the fall?
It starts day one. I think base running is something that Reggie Christensen at Sac State talked to it about being the special teams like a football team. You got offense, defense, and special teams. Base running is a vital part of what this culture is, what our offense is. Our offense is about leaving the situation better for the guy behind you, whether that's moving a runner, whether it's hitting a double, whether it's a 12 pitch at bat so the pitcher has to work. Taking extra bases is just something that it's in the mindset. And it takes away the fear. Our players in Lewiston last year played fearlessly, because they knew that whatever decision they made, they had a reason why they were doing it, and the freedom was there and it was built in because we practice it and we preach it every single day. It was important to us that our guys talk the game, speak the game, so that those split seconds decisions aren't hesitation. Our guys will react properly because we practice it every single day. I appreciate our guys' willingness to trust in and buy into that, because it does impact winning.
I mean, do you have any go-tos for a hitter who maybe hasn't had to work on moving a runner before they get to you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of self-awareness that needs to happen. Not moving a runner from, with nobody out. If you're not into bunting, it's not so much like hitting the ball to right field. I give them the freedom to, if we have a tough sinker baller on the mound that's riding the ball into a right-handed batter, like there's nothing that says you can't get the barrel out in front and slam one past the third baseman who's playing in for a bunt. But if that pitch doesn't come, like you have to be able to understand, like we're still recognizing pitches. We're recognizing the situation. The scoreboard's going to dictate how aggressive you are, how selective you are. But moving runners is something that is very unselfish. It's very selfless. Leaving the situation better for you, for your teammate behind you, is something that our guys pride themselves in, and grinding out at bats. And it allows for more freedom. So when a player comes into our program, they already feel the selflessness from the returning players. And once they feel that, then we can coach. If your first day of batting practice and you're trying to get a guy to move a guy over, whether it's a hit and run or a bunt, and they've never done it before, they're going to feel less confident. So you have to practice it. You have to give the reasons why. Like, why are we moving this guy over? Why do we have this bunting technique? Why do we want the ball bunted down the first baseline or third baseline, depending on what the situation gives us? You give them the tools. You put them in the player's baseball toolbox so that they have the opportunities to grow in those aspects of the game.
I mean, when was that brought up to you as a player?
I always felt like I was a coach on the field. I was so competitive in Little League. I didn't want any stone left unturned with the ability to compete and win. And it was just something that, when I was younger, that I was a coach on the field. I wanted my team to win ultimately. I wasn't always a catcher. I was a middle infielder as well when I was in high school. So being able to have those different aspects and have teammates be able to count on me because I was prepared. I took the liking to baseball at a very young age. Even though I did play football, basketball, and baseball in high school, baseball was always something that it was more like chess than checkers, and my brain was intrigued by baseball, and so it was something that I was always making sure that guys were in the right place at the right time, or talking and coaching and saying, hey, this is how it's going to work. Our players will tell you there's some things that I say in the dugout that's like almost calling what the game's going to do just by watching it. You can say, hey, like this guy's going to roll over this ground ball. We're going to go 5-4-3 double play. And it happens. It's just something that when you watch enough baseball, and, one thing I would want to preach to our players is just watching more baseball. We're in a very highlight driven society with social media, of just seeing the highlights. There's so much more to baseball than just the highlights. There's the little nuances, and that's why we had so much success this year. And that's why I truly believe that we're going to make this transition into Division II successfully, is having guys buy into there's so many more aspects to baseball than just the highlights.
Do you have any restrictions, social media wise or technology wise, with your guys?
No, our guys know what's at stake with just what they consume. Consuming. I have guys texting me all the time with things they see on Twitter or social media, and I'll give them my opinion. I don't think my opinion is concrete or fact. I'll have conversations. We have plenty of guys that go to Driveline and learn. We have plenty of guys that go to different facilities, and it's great, to be honest with you. The conversation, the success that it might breed into a teammate of just talking baseball. Why do you do things this way? Why do we do things this way? Why did that work for you but not him? Those conversations breed successful people, and that's what Westmont baseball is about, and that's what Westmont, the community around our baseball players, is an opportunity for growth, and having conversations with people that may not be baseball people of life and faith and journey, and that's what made me want to come to Westmont, was having the community aspects of growth, in faith and spirituality, in baseball, in leadership. Baseball is not the best sport on campus here. Our women's basketball program, our men's and women's soccer program, our track and field. I mean, all of our sports are just are off the charts, and the leaders of those programs, the head coaches, I'm learning from them every single day, and they push me to be a better coach, where I'm trying to make our assistant coaches be better by coaching them, and in part our assistant coaches will then impart wisdom onto our players, and that's what I feel should be the best case of developing players and people.
When did you switch to catching full time?
So my senior year of high school, our catcher did not make grades, unfortunately. Um, I was playing shortstop, and we didn't have a catcher, we didn't have a backup catcher, so I said I'd do it. There was a little bit of talk about that. I went to this was back before travel ball or anything like that, so I actually went to an academy called Aldretti Academy in Monterey, and Rich Aldretti, Mike Aldretti's brother. I was a left-handed hitting shortstop that, I was not fast. I had a good arm. I didn't have much range, but I made the routine play, and I knew where everybody was. So he said, "Hey, have you ever caught before?" And I said, "I used to catch. I could do it." So I started catching a little bit with him. And then that opportunity came. So my second half of my senior year, I started catching every day. Went to UC Davis, tried out with over 100 people on the first 2 days of classes, and the coaching staff at UC Davis saw something in me. Actually, after the first day, I called my dad and said, my baseball career might be over. There's over 100 people here trying out, plus the 50 or 60 that are already on the roster. UC Davis was a Division II back then, so there was unlimited rosters. But ultimately, moving to the catching position changed the course of my life.
Yeah, and you said you're a coach on the field. Those are the guys that eventually end up back there because they see it differently.
Yeah, it was something that, playing at UC Davis, Rex Peters was our head coach. Actually, my freshman year was Phil Swimley, who was there for, he's a ABCA Hall of Famer, and that was my redshirt freshman year, and there was 60 guys, and we had 3 separate teams that just played games every single day. There was 2 teams on the field. There was 1 team in the cage, and we just rotated. Then Rex Peters comes in from, Chapman, who he had great success at Chapman Division III school, and came into UC Davis in my freshman year. We went to the Division II World Series in Montgomery, Alabama. That was before they moved it to Cary. But we read Heads Up Baseball over our Christmas break. Heads Up Baseball changed my life. That's because it Heads Up Baseball, I related to it. My brain needed to work that way. And reading that book multiple times, I learned something new every time I read it. And so when you have
that's how mental aspects of baseball was for me.
For sure.
Changed the course of my playing career from junior year of high school. That junior summer that I read it changed the course of my playing career.
Yeah, and I hope that more people buy into the reading aspect, the learning aspect, the not one way to teach it or use it or implement it. There's so many different ways that you can, teach it, learn it, and the growth of what baseball was 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago to what it is now is incredible, but we need to keep moving the game forward.
How are you handling peak performance with your guys? Like how much information you're giving them, what information you're giving them?
I think it's very age appropriate. I don't talk to our seniors the same way that I would talk to a freshman hitter or a freshman pitcher. There's steps along the way in the development process that need to be met. There are we do personality tests. We know who we're dealing with. There's some players that need visual learners versus audio learners. I could say one thing to one player and it mean totally different to another player. And that's about relationships and knowing who you're talking to. As a coach, you have to be able to communicate non-verbally, verbally, with a vast array of different individuals. And so I will purposely not give a younger player a certain amount of information because I want them to first of all get this information and then we'll move on to the next. Those questions and conversations I had with Brady Rank, I was not having with a freshman because Brady Rank had been through a lot of baseball and I was preparing him for what he was going to be for this team. And so there was more conversations about maybe technique and skill level and picking up little nuances of the game. And he had that innately. But freshmen, you try to give them very, very minimal. Maybe it's just approach. Maybe it's just one single finite aspect of the game that they need to work on in that moment. That's going to better them a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. But I think it's very age appropriate and figuring out who you're talking to.
We talked about the World Baseball Classic. You had some great lines on the World Baseball Classic when we talked in Lewiston, and just that whole
Yeah,
experience for you and guys coming together and figuring it out. And how much has that helped you now?
it's helped me out immensely. I think what we did in Lewiston this last year was bigger than baseball. I had a social media post about a reflection of what I felt with all the people reaching out. About 15 years ago in 2008, they were going to drop the program here at Westmont. Um, a fire ripped through Santa Barbara mountains and burnt down our field. And our athletic director at the time, Dave Odell, saved the program. And the impact that it's had on a lot of people um, is was greatly felt. But that World Baseball Classic, we felt like we were the underdog, showing that we could go up toe to toe with Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, USA, Canada, Mexico, all those teams that we faced. And we had leads on all of them. And we felt like we had an impact on each other. Guys that hadn't gotten their major league breakthrough yet, guys that were minor leaguers, guys from Italy that were just on the national team that hadn't even played at that level. I'll never forget, we're playing Mexico in the first game. Jason Gurley's on the mound. Bases loaded, 2 outs. We're up by one. Sergio Romo had just given us the lead the inning before. And one of my teammates from the national team never played minor league baseball, had only played in Italy, was a defensive replacement for Nick Punto, who is a big leaguer. He's a defensive replacement for him at second base. Bases loaded, 3-2 count. Gurley gets a ground ball to him, and he fields it and throws it to first base. Like there was no hesitation. Like I was so proud to be that kid's teammate, to know what he went through to make this World Baseball Classic team. Like there was no hesitation. We believed in each other, just like the belief that we talked about in this Westmont Warrior baseball program, the belief that is built, and to build it in that a short amount of time with the World Baseball Classic was something that I'll never forget. I have teammates that we still talk to each other. And and you see it like last year in the World Baseball Classic, you see a different brand of baseball. And that's the baseball that I think I said to you in Lewiston was, you're playing for the name on the front of your shirt, not the name on the back of the shirt. And you're playing for a country, and you're playing for pride, and you're playing for something bigger than baseball.
I mean, who did you all lean on? Who were the kind of the major voices on that team with some of the older guys that said, "Hey, we can go play with anybody"?
To be honest with you, is our manager, Marco Mazzieri. He had a vision. I think all great leaders have a clear and concise vision. I learned that from him. And I truly believe that I had so many coaches throughout my career that led me to who I am today. And my clear and concise vision for Westmont baseball was developed by having our manager who brought a bunch of players from different major league organizations from different countries and brought us together with a vision, and stuck to it. Now, that commitment could have led us to 4 losses and going on our own way. For some reason, that vision, he took a chance and gave us the vision and committed to it, and we all bought into it. And that vision, that laser focus of what Marco gave to us, and he truly cared about us as individuals. And so we bought in. We bought into each other. We bought into and a lot of it came from you know a bunch of guys that were still making names for themselves. Like I said, like Jason Grilli was probably the biggest name on the team. Anthony Rizzo was our first baseman. He had just broke through to the major leagues. Wasn't it who he is today? Nick Punto was on the kind of the backside. Alex Liddy was a big leaguer that was the first Italian born big leaguer on the team. Chris Norfia was in center field. We had minor leaguers and Italian professional players that were on that team that, like I said, like it was very, very much like Westmont baseball. And we were not the most talented team in Lewiston, but we were the best team in Lewiston because we cared about each other and we believed in each other, through the ups and downs of what baseball is.
How'd you know when it was time to be finished playing? It's a hard thing for people to realize.
Yeah. I was under, just going back to the way I was brought up, is someone's going to have to rip the jersey off of me and take it away. I was a non-drafted free agent. Had to come in every spring training and win a job. I was in AA with the Biloxi Shuckers of AA with the Brewers. Not playing very much. Put my body through a lot because I knew I needed to make sure that my health wasn't the reason I left the game. Tony Schifano, head coach at San Francisco State, was a UC Davis guy. We'd known each other. He called me, said, "Hey, I don't know where you're at with your playing experience. What you're trying to do. But I just got the head job at San Francisco State, and I want you to, if you're ready." And there was a lot of emotion in that. And ultimately decided to jump on board with Tony, and it was obviously the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. To come home,
great one to go work for, by the way.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. Tony's awesome, and to be honest with you, a lot of those offensive tactics, a lot of those base running tactics, that's all stuff that me and him grew up with being around Davis and being around each other. All the stops I've had along the way of great head coaches, of winning head coaches. I think being around winners was something that was very important to my development as a coach. Whether I was an assistant coach or now that I'm in a head coaching role, all those people have impact in your lives. Even the managers that I had in minor league baseball, or the big league spring trainings. I remember being in spring training and listening to Bochy and Dave Righetti and Mark Gardner and all those coaches with the Giants, Flannery, Wotus. I was listening to them. I wasn't up on the top row looking at watching the stands and looking in the stands or maybe focused too much on baseball, but I was listening to them. So all the coaches, positive or negative, had an impact on who I am today, and truly believe that I am who I am because of those experiences.
Bruce Bochy for me is unbelievable. He just even keeled. When you think of a big league manager, like a good big league manager, he's one of the first guys. Him and Socher are the first guys that kind of pop into my head. That okay, that's what you need to be if you're gonna make it that long as a manager.
I think so, and the catching background of that is definitely apparent, because you do have to bring a group of people together. And you have to be able to have a clear and concise vision. Bochy always had a vision of each season. He always had the pulse of the team. He was very observant. his words were intentional. Um, Sometimes it wasn't even saying anything. That was the intentional part of it. And I definitely learned a lot from just being a fly on the wall in some of those conversations in the dugout with a Hall of Fame coaching staff. And that was special for me.
Did you know Robert Ruiz at all before you took the job? I mean, did you know
Yeah.
him before?
Yeah, so we're both Northern California products. He's a few years older than me from South San Francisco. I You probably have a lot of people that have been to Stanford Camp before. Stanford Camp is a very, very special group of coaches that go and work those events. And so I actually met him. I was coaching at San Francisco State. Um, his My grandfather and his uncle are really, really good friends, so like there was a mutual interest, just because my grandfather said, hey, there's, my grandfather was the commissioner of the state of California junior colleges. Him and Jerry Weinstein are best friends, because and just from being around each other. But he was, hey, you got to go talk to Robert Ruiz, and you got to, make sure you tell him about Andy, and make that connection. My grandfather was always talking to me about connections and relationships. And so I got to meet Robert. And then fast forward, 6 or 7 years, I came down here on my interview, and it just felt like home. It felt like this was the right place for me. And I'm thankful for all those opportunities previously, but Stanford Camp is where I built a lot of my coaching network of who I talk to and who I reach out to with issues or problems, or just to talk.
I'm glad Stanford Camp's still going. It's just
It,
that the mentoring piece, just all of that. I think we miss a little bit of that. There's not as many winter camps, especially for cold parts of the world. There's not as many because the recruiting rules are different now. I think we miss a lot of that mentoring piece with the older coaches helping the younger coaches that you still get at the Stanford Camp.
Stanford Camp was so impactful in my development, in our program's development, talking to coaches from all over the country, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, South, NAIA, Division III, Ivy League. Bob Whalen's at Stanford
Still
Camp.
doing it.
Oh yeah, still there,
Still
and
doing it.
and Rich Price working it, and so many head coaches that you're having conversations, you're just watching them, you're learning from them, and it's a 4 or 5 days where it's like an ABCA convention on a micro level, because of the wealth of knowledge that's there. And whether you agree with it or use it or implement it or not, at least it's something that you're putting into your coaching portfolio.
Is that one of your kids' drawings on the dry erase board behind you?
So
Love it.
this is the perks of one of the perks of having a seven. She actually, this was her first day of school today, second grade. She came to work with me this summer. Both of our assistant coaches, Elijah Ontiveros coached with Coach Pickler at YD in the Cape this summer. Our pitching coach coached for the Santa Barbara Foresters this summer. So I was on campus a lot with youth camps and other camps. But my daughter would come to campus with me, and the whole entire whiteboard is all drilled up. But that's why we do it. I love the fact that my daughter is on campus with me, and around such great people here at Westmont.
That's great. You let your assistants go out and coach in the summertime.
Yeah, it's only going to impact our players. It's going to grow them. That I think um, it was a lot of maybe having a summer with not having them around, but I think it was worth it in the long run of their development, how they're going to impact our players, how it's going to impact their lives. I want them to grow. My job as a head coach is to prepare them for whatever job they may come. I hope they're here for another 20 years at Westmont, but the reality is I need to prepare them for their next job, whether that's taking over a head coach after I retire here, or the next job that they want to do. I want to give them every resource, because that's what I was given as an assistant coach. I was given the opportunity to talk to so many head coaches and build relationships with so many people. The West Coast recruiting is a very social a very social brotherhood, and to get to meet people and talk to people and work events like Stanford Camp, or just go out and recruiting. Like that's how you grow yourself, and put yourself in positions, because this game is about relationships, and this job occupation is about relationships and growth.
Do you have a fail forward moment? Have something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now, it helped you grow, move forward?
Yeah, I think as a pitching coach, I was always trying to learn, how to communicate with pitchers, even though I wasn't a pitcher, and knowing the tech that is involved in being a pitching coach, and I think a fail forward moment was actually realizing that maybe I was more built for being a head coach, and overseeing a lot of it rather than just being so finite on pitching. As a pitching coach and a recruiting guy, it gets really really hard, to be able to develop your pitchers at the same token. So when Reggie Christensen asked me, maybe about shifting over to a lot more recruiting and working with the catchers and maybe working some with the hitters and coaching one of the bases, like did I love it? No, because I've always been a pitching coach, but I knew it was going to be better for our pitchers. I knew it was going to be better for our players. And so, it led me to here and being at Westmont, and having people like you in my life of pushing me to be a better coach. And so, that was definitely a fail forward moment for me.
The pitching position for me, I've said it forever. If guys that can do both, like all of it, they end up making a lot of money now. That's been one of my tips to young coaches getting in. And I'm like, if you want to move up and move up quick, be a pitching guy. Now they get let go quicker too, but it happens to guys. We've had a lot of really good ones that have been let go. But if you can recruit and develop and all that, but it is time consuming. And
Yeah, it's maybe Division I baseball going with pitching coaches and pitching development coaches, and having the more resources to have more coaches. At Sac State, it was the four of us. It was three assistants and our head coach. And if I was out recruiting, the pitchers were on their own. And so I think it's important to make sure that you have the right coaches involved and you have communication based on mutual respect, and having the
But you've
players.
said it, the relationship between pitching coach and pitchers is so different than any other
Yes.
dynamic.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
So with kid, how many kids you have?
Just one daughter. She just turned 7 a couple weeks ago, and she's just started second grade.
So which is good. That's a fun age. I miss that age.
She's 7 going on 17,
So how
and she
close is
hates
her school to campus then?
20 minutes. And we walk. I walk her to school in the morning, so we walk to
So
school this
that's your
morning. Drop.
routine. I always ask about routines. That's a great routine. If I was around, I always try to drop them off at school if I could.
Yeah, and I think that going from Division I assistant coach to head coach at NAIA, and now Division II, I do have that time to go and be a part of my daughter's life a little bit more. It was definitely a different job path, from going from a Division I assistant and being on the road and having, maybe to be on the phone a little bit more, to being going down to a lower level and still having the impact on your players, but also having a major impact on my family, has been huge.
Did you lean on any coaches when you're going to make that decision? Did you lean on any other lower level coaches and they're like, hey, the quality of life is much better?
Yeah, there was quite a few coaches that have just been a huge resource for me, through this process. And Matt Vaughn, was the pitching coach at UC Davis, was the head coach at UC Davis. Rex Peters, I talked to him a lot. Tony Schifano, Reggie, all the coaches that I've coached for, they're all mentors for me. And they also have insight onto what my path would be, because they haven't invested they're invested in me as a person. And I appreciate everybody that's been a huge resource for me, because they've poured into my life so that I can pour into our players' lives. Yeah, there was conversations about what this transition would look like. And to be honest with you, it's probably more, impactful than I thought it was going to be. Going from a state school, I was a state at 3 state schools, and then coming to a school like Westmont, it's impactful on my life as a whole. Like you said, the work life balance has been so much more of a balance than maybe at the Division I level.
Any advice for new coaches trying to get into this thing? You've been at a bunch of different levels. Any advice?
Yeah, advice would be um, the advice that I would give a young coach is first to build relationships with as many people as possible, and don't think that you know it all, because you don't, and just be humble enough to understand like there are so many different ways to coach baseball and coach in general, that don't try not to have preconceived notions when doing so, but also I think it's important that you work. If you, whatever you decide on a decision, whenever you have a decision, make it full heartedly and commit to it with a clear vision of what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, but also stay true to who you are. Be authentic to you. Don't change the way that you want to, that you feel like you need to coach because of a certain
Yeah, don't
situation.
change who you are. You can't.
No, I think it's vitally important to stay who you are. If you are a quiet, um, quiet individual, stay quiet and just be impactful that way. If you're outgoing and have a sense of humor, like be that. I think that that's vitally important, is to stay authentic to yourself.
What are some final thoughts before I let you go?
Become an ABCA member. The brotherhood that you get when you get into the ABCA and go to conventions and the barnstormers and the rewatching videos of impactful people. I've been listening to these podcasts ever since I got into coaching. Listening to Nate Trotsky a couple weeks ago. Listening to high school coaches. Listening to one of the things I found very not really funny but intriguing about my experience at Lewiston is my our first game I was coaching against 1,000 game winner. I was a first year head coach. The third game I was going against William Carey, and the head coach at William Carey has won 1,300 career wins. And so baseball is one of those funny sports where you can match up with the best in the country, and come out on top. But I think this game is so much bigger than just baseball, and being a part of a brotherhood like the ABCA, and building relationships with people like you and people like Sheets and people that are just going to have a huge impact on your life, whether it's from the East Coast to the West Coast, the South to the North. I have so many more friends and so many more people across the country that are going to make me a better person. And it's all because of the ABCA and this coaching fraternity. It's something that I'll remember I'm going to continue to remember and be a part of, because it is, something where as a young coach, you can go to an ABCA convention and be walking around with Corbin and Savage and all these greats, but also have high school coaches that have had immense success in their own right. And so you can walk among the giants and feel like you're still learning from them, and they're willing to give you information. And nothing that we do here at Westmont is anything that I cooked up in a lab. It's stuff that I've learned and stole from other people, and used as our own. And I think that that's what the ABCA does for all of us.
Yeah, I get weekly reminders of how great we have great coaches at every level. It's just it's weekly. I get weekly reminders of how great we have coaches at every level. It's tremendous. So,
Yeah.
well, sir, appreciate your time. Like I said, it was great to meet you this summer. And again, that's the other thing that sticks out too. Like you meet people briefly in our industry, and then you look up in 10 years and you're been friends with somebody for 10 years. It's tremendous.
Yes, I appreciate you having me on, and if anybody needs to reach me, my email address is on our website. I'm more than willing to talk to anybody, and hopefully and spread the word of what Westmont College and what Westmont baseball is, and just help it in any way I can.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.